Well, good morning and welcome. Can everyone hear? Good, I'll try to speak up. And can everyone hear our viewing audience at home? Good. It's nice to see everyone today. Let's begin with prayer. Oh God, distant yet near, we gather as witnesses to your promise that if we seek you with all our hearts, we will find you. Be among us this day. Hear the confessions of our mouths and the yearnings of our hearts. Help us change the narrowness of our vision and the pettiness of our living. Make us new again with your holy grace. Grant us the maturity to accept your many gifts and humility and to use them with faithfulness. Grant us your spirit that our conversation today may have integrity and energy, ever witnessing to your holy presence in our lives. We praise and give thanks to you, eternal presence, through Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Good morning. First, welcome everyone. It is nice to see you all. Let me pull up one here and at home. Hopefully can see this. We're looking to have an hour-long gathering. We've done the opening prayer and we're reviewing the session now. We'll take a couple of minutes to just connect to each other, and then we'll give you some updates and share the status of where we were at. And then actually Amy's going to lead us in the conversation. Our goal is to be done at 11:15, stick to an hour. And this is our first session, certainly not our last. This is the beginning of the conversation, and this will be a conversation that I think will continue, hopefully it will continue for a little while. So I'm wondering if we could just go around and say who you are, if you don't know who you are.
I'm from Pennsylvania and pay for the worship service.
Oh. Well, it's nice to see you. And maybe just say something that you're looking forward to this week. So, and I think probably, well, we'll say our names and stuff just in case there are people that don't know each other. We'll go halfway around the circle and then we'll jump to the screens and then come back. So I'll start, and my name is Neil, Neil Cass, as you know. And the exciting part of this week is it is spring break for Ithaca College. No, it's not spring break. It's fall break at Ithaca College, and Rachel will be coming home on Wednesday for the weekend. So that is exciting.
I'm Lexi Healy, and Neil stole my thunder, but Josh will also be joining us for a family dinner. So that'll be great.
Behind the post, I'm Dave Anderson. Good to see everybody. I'm looking forward to just being outside in this coming week. It should be a little bit better weather. That'll be fun.
Kathy Anderson, went apple shopping yesterday, so I'm looking forward to making an apple pie.
Well, and I guess this Friday, my wife and I will be celebrating 60 years.
Wow.
I think that's pretty fantastic that we still. That's good. But, other than that, I'm just happy to be here and hopefully rewarding and important meeting.
Thank you.
I'm still around. Looking forward to
So I have to say, I just
We'll jump to Sarah.
Sarah Hale. Let's see. I'm looking forward to, Alice has gone back to New York, but she will be back with us for a few days this week and then back to New York. We have a lot of travel. So this will be our last chunk of time with her for the first week of the week. So I'm looking forward to making the most of that.
Sorry, I got here late. I'm on Flower Every, just we're talking about what we're looking forward to
This week.
This week.
This week. Just having another beautiful week in New Hampshire, that's good enough for me. With my husband by my side, that sounds great.
Let's jump up, Amy and Mark.
Hi, Amy. This is Mark. We're hoping that our wood pellet stove in the background is not too loud for you all. Is that okay? All right, good. We're enjoying, we just got our bikes fixed and we've been out riding around the area. So that's our big fall new thing.
Great. Patricia.
Hi, I'm Patricia McFarland. I'm looking forward to the nice weather coming up too.
And Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob Kite, and I will be your guest preacher in October and a couple of times in November. So I'm eager to hear what your ideas and plans are. I call this sermon preparation.
I'm going to jump back. So a couple of you just came in. We're just going around and saying what we're looking forward to this week, just saying who we are. And we'll go back to Jane.
I'm Jane Richards Jones, and we're actually going to see the James Bond movie this afternoon. Our first time in a movie theater in how long? A year and a half, 2 years. So we'll be holding our breath. We're hoping it goes well. Hi, I'm Robin Jackson, and like Dave, I'm looking forward to getting up my yard. And this is the first week of my 3 that my mom doesn't have any doctor appointments, so I'm going to deal with that. Susan Francis, and I'm looking forward to doing my garden.
Diane Streeter, and I'm looking forward to staying with my granddaughter tomorrow. There's no school, so we're gonna do some putting gardens to bed and maybe do some baking.
Chris Streeter, my brother is coming down on Wednesday. He's been coming to Hancock since I've lived here. That's 45 some years. And very nice to come down occasionally, just drive around the back road, have a visit, reminisce.
Kathleen Kelmer, nice to see you all. There's always wonderful things to do every day. I think appreciating the beautiful fall foliage is something that's precious and precarious. And probably will be downloading some of my photography and going to maybe doing the kids' watercolor exhibit today. So I'm looking forward to seeing her and her work at the art.
Great. Carol disappeared. Roberta.
Hi, I can hardly hear anyone, so I'm Roberta Bell. I don't know what the question was.
Oh, if there's something you're looking forward to this week.
Second drawer down.
It's just, I'm very grateful to live where we do.
Happy birthday to Dick, who turned 90. Did you get that?
I will tell him, he's standing right here. Thank you.
Matthew?
What am I looking forward to this week? More Indian summer weather.
Great. And Peter, we are just introducing ourselves and saying something we're looking forward to this week.
I'm Peter Boblowski, and I'm looking forward to finishing getting my garden in. And I went to a delightful orchard over in Maine yesterday, and I just took a pie out of the oven. So I'm looking forward to that pie.
We can almost smell it. I think it's telling that we have a great turnout. It's really nice to see you all. And I think it shows how much we all care. The next part is we just want to give you some updates on where we are, to sort of set the stage for the conversation. And my first part is talking about our pastoral leadership. As you know, we've had two bridge pastors. Bob Kite was just about a year ago. He was with us, and then Alexis was with us. During that time, I just want to say thank you to all the council, because the council has worked really hard, along with other people in the congregation, to kind of keep things going. Currently, we are looking for an interim minister. This person would help us with the process of determining who we are, how our ministry should look into the future, and where we want to be. This is a really important step to make sure that when we have a settled pastor, it's a great match. The realistic thing is there are currently about 40 churches in New Hampshire in the UCC that are open, that have no pastor, and there's not really enough interims. And we currently have no candidates. So we had one who has gone somewhere else, although they say we're a very attractive place to be. The conference tells us that. They might tell everyone that, but today is the beginning of that sort of interim work. We're not going to just sit here. The council doesn't want to sit here while we look for an interim. So we will keep working forward, and this is the beginning of that conversation. So it may turn out that we have this whole conversation and do this whole process, and we never have an interim. We move to a settled pastor. Some of the realities as we move forward to, we're going to have to really consider, can we afford a full-time pastor now and in 3 to 5 years, because we certainly wouldn't want to call someone and not be able to keep them. The reality also is 2/3 of the UCC churches in New Hampshire now have part-time pastors. I would say 5 to 10 years ago, there were a handful with part-time, and now 2/3. So I think that's important to know. Pastoral Coverage, I didn't even know he was going to be here, but we are very fortunate to have Bob Kite. And it seems like he really loves our church, and we love having him. He is committed to the 3rd and 4th Sundays of October and November. At this point, we will have our second community conversation on the 2nd Sunday in November. Susan Klinkenbeard, who is an MDiv student who actually went to camp with Lexi, and we know her as Klink, will be here. So Klink will be preaching on November 7th. October 31st is still open. We're hoping to fill that in. And as Bob said, it's good to hear different voices. And then conversations are in the work about Advent. And if seeing Bob's here, if you want to twist his arm, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that must be it. That's the end of my notes. Hopefully people are hearing okay. Now Dave Anderson is going to do a financial update, and I will share that screen so you can see that.
I have handouts. I gave this sheet. I think everybody here has one. Can you guys at home see what's up there okay? I see a thumbs up from Peter. I don't see the other people anyway on the screen, but I bet you can. Let us know if you can. I don't want to I hate when people do PowerPoint and they read everything that's there. I'm not gonna do that, I'll do it quickly. Couple of things that I think I wanted to emphasize is the second and third line about operating income and operating expenses. As you can see, our income is well ahead of our expenses so far. And I think that's going to continue through the rest of the year, because it's pretty much been the pattern most months. We're doing great on pledges, doing very well on community appeal. We're getting more community appeal toward Christmas time, and I suspect we'll make or exceed that $10,000 goal. And fundraising recently especially has been fantastic. Old Home Day was a success, and this past weekend's yard sale, pie sale, clothing brought in over $6,000, which is amazing. So the fundraisers have exceeded their goal, so we may have to raise their goal for next year. We have received quite a bit of memorial gifts, mostly in memory of Matt. And part of the reason that we have the variation is because our expenses are down. We've only spent $16,000 on pastor's salary this year, where we had budgeted for $40,000. So that's a savings, but it's an unfortunate savings. You'll see the endowment numbers there that we have available to you. One thing that I meant to put in and forgot, but I looked it up this morning. We also have, it's not really part of the endowment, the Pastoral Housing Support Fund, which we started after the parsonage was sold. That currently has $171,000 in it. So that's money that's really intended. We try not to use it every year if we don't need to support the salary and benefits of our pastor. And that's where we have used it in the past. Use it that way in the future. I put in helping hands just so people know that balance right now is over $236,000. We've had a small amount in the church's checking account from the days when helping hands was done by the town, and the church was also had donations to it. We took all of that out and put it into the larger helping hands account so that we can keep that checking account completely separate, since it is such a large amount of money now. And the last thing I wanted to just mention, and I think we're going to be talking some more about it later, is the Vestry roof project, which is expected to cost $22,000 plus maybe $5,000 in plywood. We've paid $7,500 so far, and we'll need to produce the balance because the project is expected to go ahead this fall. In our budget, we have $20,000 this year for meeting house expenses that we don't expect to use. So we can, that's basically where I figured the $7,500 would come from. Carry over the rest for next year, because there will be meeting house expenses, but probably not this year. But it still leaves a lot to be raised. Applied for a grant from the L. Anderson Fund. There's a couple other suggestions for grants. And other possibilities are a capital fund drive, or maybe somebody mentioned a GoFundMe drive. So that's something to be talking about this week. Any questions? I like it.
Thank you, Dave. And then our last sort of update is about buildings, and I think Chris will give a Vestry update.
Yeah, I serve on the operations, Ministry of Operations, and Matthew chairs that committee. And then asked me to look into getting roofing contract prices. Try to get a local contractor, and they felt really it was too big of a building and too high to tackle. So we got 3 commercial contractors, Geyer Roofing in Marlboro, Melanson and Keene, and Valancourt Roofing in Milford. The council awarded Valancourt Roofing the contract. Their plan is to start the end of this month. And as Dave mentioned, the plywood contingency, when the vestry was roofed 20 years ago, the church side was re-plywood. The downtown side was not. And so when Valencourt, they're the ones that actually got up on the roof and looked and realized that, they put a contingency in case that has to be plywood, that would be covered. So the original bid was $5,700 for the contingency, and because plywood's come down, we were able to get that lower, 5,000 that Dave showed. We did some drainage on the church side of the vestry. There was water running into the basement and eroding the foundation. Well, Matson gave a very fair price on that, and the council agreed to go ahead and have that done. That was $1,800 to put drainage in all along the foundation and have an offshoot drain go out to the driveway.
Thank you, and thank you, Chris, for all your work on this. All right, and I'll give you a brief update on the meeting house. All right, so this is the 2022 budget. We've been trying to, the Meeting House Committee meets regularly. It's a joint church in town. Gary Ryer also represents us there. He and I are the two. We haven't been able to find painting contractors, so no painting has been done the last couple of years. The plan is to paint the exterior west, south, and east sides next year at a cost of $40,000 estimated, and our share is half that, which is $20,000. At the same time, painting the fire escape, which has some cost, replacing broken slates, and rebuilding the ladder upstairs so Bob or Bobby doesn't fall. It's getting a little wiggly, and so those are the overall costs, which comes to an estimate of $25,500. As mentioned, we had budgeted $20,000, which was this year's estimate before. So that was in this year's budget, which we won't be spending, although we'll be spending it on the vestry roof. So that's kind of where that is. This is 7 years of the 20-year plan for the meeting house. And as you can see, the church's share in this year is fairly small. Next year is the $25,000. Then it's $4,500, $4,500, $4,500. And then we hit 2027. And that's the year to do the steeple work. So it's $59,000, just to kind of give and then it drops to $4,000, and then goes more painting needs to be done and jumps to $24,000. So we just wanted to kind of give you a perspective on what's coming up, because it kind of helps to frame where we're at. Does anyone have any questions on that? So hopefully that gave a little bit of an update, and now Amy's going to take over and do the conversation.
Okay, so like Neil said and framed this before, we don't intend to sit and just be passive about the interim. When an interim pastor comes, they do quite a questionnaire with us, and we had to do a bit of the questionnaire just to submit an application to get an interim. But we'd like to take those questions out to the larger group and not just have it be circulating among the 7 on the council. And we want to get your opinions. So I'm not going to throw out all the questions to you. I did put 3 of them into the newsletter, and I'm going to restate those now. And I'm going to state each one of those questions and just give you a minute to just think on it on your own. And then I'll give you the next question, then the third question, and then we'll come back around and I'll pose one of those questions and just start and open the conversation. And they're all guided to our future and who we want to be and when will we be our best self and how are we going to measure that and those kind of things. So the first one, to just ponder for a moment in your own thoughts, in your own way, is how do you want our church to be known to the greater public? And I want to make sure everyone's hearing my voice and am I coming across clearly? Okay. So how do you want, how do you want our church to be known to the greater public?
While you're thinking, there is coffee back there. If anybody needs some coffee to help.
And the second one is, what do you think is most needed by our congregation during this time of transition?
Repeat, please.
Yep.
Could you
What-
repeat that, please? My internet connection is unstable.
Sure. What do you think is most needed by our congregation during this time of transition?
Thank you.
And finally, what are the most significant concerns that you have about the congregation or concerns or issues that you hope will be given attention during this transition time? So like Neil said, this is just the beginning of the conversation. We do have another one planned in November. And I hope that also this inspires us to keep conversations going. When you meet people on the street, you bump into them, fellowship hour, all those things. We need to keep these conversations going. So I think what I'd like to do, we have a short, not long, we want to make sure that the doesn't go too long. So, and I want to make sure all voices are heard that would like to be heard. So I think we're going to start with, how do you want our congregation to be known to the public? And if you have a thought about that, some words, maybe 2 or 3 words that you can summarize. And I'll be taking notes here. I think Sarah's probably taking notes. Someone else, we can collect those and just, it's a brainstorming. It's just to get our ideas out. It's nothing firm yet. We're not trying to hone this in at the moment. We're just trying to see where your point of view is coming from. So would anyone like to open up with, how would you like our church to be known to the greater public? Go ahead, Jane.
I like to think of us as a caring community.
Open and welcoming to the community.
Reaching out and helping people in need, locally and at distance.
Actively engaged.
Yeah, I would second what Roberta said about actively engaged, not a passive organization, but actively engaged in the community.
think it'll be important for us to still be meeting, still be worshiping regularly, and still be open.
I'd say generous, that we're a generous entity in the community.
Go ahead, Robin.
And open and affirming to everybody, let everybody feel.
All of this sounds like walking the walk and talking the talk that are the values of the Christian church.
I have to second that. But I'd like it to be a Christian-based church, and I think that does include all of what we said. I'd like for you to know that we worship God.
But that shouldn't make us an exclusive group.
Correct.
Because Christ was all about inclusivity, everybody.
Go ahead.
Expanding on Robin's comment a little bit too, I'd love to see that rainbow flag go up.
Meaning you want to see us completely open the further process?
That's right.
Yes. I think it's important as we go through this transition, whether we have full-time or part-time pastors, that we show a sense of strength, Christian strength into the community, that we're not a flowering church or a strong Christian-based church. Even though we're small in numbers, we have strength in those numbers.
And I think that's important. I fear that we would go in the direction of a community center and less a church.
Are there any last thoughts on that one? Did everyone get heard that would like to be heard on that note?
Well, I guess,
One last thought.
oh, one more.
Go ahead, Christine, and then Roberta.
Okay, the general community, I think, doesn't have a lot of interest in this kind of community. I mean, that's kind of obvious with the amount of people that are here. And that's, I don't know, how do you reach people that aren't interested in faith-based or prayer? I mean, it's just, how do you do that? How do you engage a community that isn't interested in religion?
But if they're interested in the things that we do, the outreach, the, helping the poor, those are values that other people have, even if they don't want the religion. They might come to see more of that, see that better when they see, I hate to use the term good works, because we're not supposed to be about getting to heaven by good works. But you know what I mean. Yes.
We have a whole new group of people, as people that I knew here 20 years ago, they're not here anymore. And there's a whole new group of people that I don't really know very well, or know who they are even. So I'm kind of not a full member of the church, but I kind of recognize that there's been a really big shift about our community. And I think that's not something you put on a questionnaire or a response to finding an interim minister, but I think that's the key issue here. I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I feel.
Mhm. So Kathleen, without just reframing for a second, instead of thinking about how we gather more people into our fold or bring back people, just think about it as an entity, even if like we were a business. And if people were talking about us, how would you want them to be talking about us? What's our identity to other people? Do you have a thought about that?
In some ways, I think last week's yard sale exemplified that, because people were really glad to be here. We were really glad to have them. We were providing service, both to the people who dropped their stuff off and the people who bought the stuff. People got great bargains and reasonable prices. We were all friendly and kind and had a lot of laughs. And I thought that was a perfect example of what, not that we can have a yard sale every weekend, but maybe we could, we do have a lot of stuff. But I thought that was a great example of how we could be kind of a heartbeat for the community, welcoming all different kinds of people, looking for different kinds of.
That's very good, Jane.
Project oriented, maybe, I don't know what that's gonna play out, but I agree with everybody's comments. We need to be active, we need to be seen, we need to be seen as caring and welcoming and warm to people.
Thank you, Jane. Roberta, we don't want to miss out on your comment.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Yep, covered.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
Okay, Amy, he can't see me yet, Sarah. We had a wonderful sermon, and I'm thinking Bob gave it, but it could have been Alexis. That really flipped that whole paradigm 180 degrees. Is that you, Bob?
Talking about his son, what his son wanted in church.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It was that, what makes people come to you? Is it your ideology? If that's the norm that people think, you have to plant this ideology and then get followers, or do you flip it and just live, like Jane's saying, live, and you're saying it, and Molly, you live it, and people want to be part of it, and that defines your community. Was that you, Bob? There was a great sermon about that. Does anyone else remember that?
Amy, I'm not hearing it all. Is there a question for me?
They were, Neil, do you want to summarize into your microphone, or do you? Yeah.
Sure. So Sarah was talking about a sermon that she thinks you did, and I think you did too, about sort of being the example of what we want to. You don't go out with your necessarily, I don't want to say theology, you live what you believe, and then people want to be part of that because you're following what you believe and your faith, and people become part of that. And they may start not knowing that, I guess they're growing into their faith, but that happens as we model that.
Yes, I actually remember that sermon too. Over many years in church work, I've come to see and understand and try to tell that the way that people will find a church is if they look at you. And if you are excited about your church, if you're getting something out of your church, if it is so meaningful for you that you can't wait for Sunday morning to come around, or whatever the event is that draws you to your church, those people are going to want what you have. So it is about modeling, but it has to start with you. That's the short version, but you got a mini sermon, okay?
Thank you, Bob.
You might read that sermon again, a repeat during this process.
Sarah, I think it's on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You pick it up anytime with the 50 other that are up there as well.
Peter
All
wants to
right,
say.
moving along, just in the consideration of time, unless we have one more on this subject.
I think Peter.
Oh, Peter, thank you.
Muted here.
I would like us to be known as a grateful and thankful congregation that is not only open and affirming, but also accepting of all people. And I think we are, and the examples that were brought forward of the yard sale is engagement with the greater community that we have, that we work very hard for, and in fact have been very rewarded for. I think that goes on continuously. The church's involvement with the Black Heritage Trail opening several weeks ago is another activity that the church took a fairly large part in, and was shown in a very good and grateful light in the community. And for that, I am proud. And to go along with what Bob said, you know, I think if we just keep doing good works in the community, the clothing sale, giveaway, whatever, I think people have needs, and if we take an active role in being engaged in the community, that is a role that the church needs to play. The other one that just came to mind is the 68 hours of hunger. That is a wonderful program, and it engages an enormous amount of people, you know, from multiple communities. And the church is, and the community of Hancock is very active in that participation. So I think while the numbers of active members who come to church every week are not large, we are a strong community, and for that I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So we have 15 minutes left of time. And the next two questions are they're separate, but they're kind of combined. So you can take either point of them. What's needed in our time of transition, or what are your concerns during that time of transition? If you see any issues, or you see any concerns, or you see things that need to be in place, and we're just going to focus on this transition time, knowing that we don't really have a timeline. We're not exactly sure when that next pastor is coming. We hope it's right on the horizon, but we don't know. And so for some of you, that might be a huge concern. Maybe you need that settled pastor to feel comfortable. For others, that might not be a concern. But all the little details of church and thinking about all these things that we just talked about, being caring and opening and reaching out, and being actively engaged, and having regular worship, and being generous, and being having the strong values in our Christian center, using the yard sale sort of as just the metaphor of who we are at our best. So let's transition now our conversation. What are your needs, concerns, issues going forward? Yes, Susan.
I think it's important that when we, look to a permanent minister, that we get someone who can bring in young people. Because the church is only old people. As they retire or move away, leave your family, or just pass on, we need young people in the church. So whether it's some way that we could appeal to young people. So I remember this church when they were a youth group that was doing hikes and overnights and retreats and things like that of teenagers, and there were, Sunday school that was full. Church that has young people coming into it as families, somehow we need to reach out to them. And I know there are new families moving in, because I was on the welcome to Hancock committee for the Old Women's Club. And there's lots of young couples coming in with young children. We're just not seeing them in church.
Okay, thank you.
I think one of the needs that the congregation might have is knowing that there's support from a minister, even if we don't have a regular full-time or interim one. If somebody's sick or frightened or going through a difficult time, to be able to talk to somebody. I mean, our cat died recently, which is a very small matter compared to what a lot of people experience, but Bob sent me a very caring email. And it meant a lot, So I think even if we don't have a steady presence, people need to know there is some pastoral availability if they need that kind of support.
Go ahead.
I think we need to make visually obvious to the community. I'm not sure how, but like the yard sale, the Christmas cards, maybe during the Bethlehem this year, to be, so people know that there is an active church here. We need to be present and obvious in some ways. I don't have a vision for that.
Amy, I saw a church in Keene a while ago that had a badminton net set up on their front lawn. And I thought, what an easy thing that would be for us to buy some badminton rackets and birdies and put that up and just have it there for kids to whack away when they're walking by. I mean, in the summer when they're going to the pond, there's a real feeling of kids and life and vitality in town. And I mean, even something as small as that might say, you're welcome here, come and play at our place,
You could put an ad in the Hancock happenings, just a little ad saying, we have a minister, you need him or her. Just remind people that you have an active church.
I'll add that during transition, I think it's a huge challenge to fill the pulpit every week. And that concerns me because I think we are a congregation that likes a good sermon. And so that's just a concern because we've been working very hard, as Neil said, for a year and a half. And we've done well, and we don't know how much longer this is that we need to sustain this effort. So we've already been in transition for a year, so that does concern.
So avoiding burnout.
Oh, avoiding burnout. Yeah. Don't propose
it. So I would add, when we're small, as we are now, then we're an intimate group. And so anybody walking in, it's one thing to walk into a new situation when there's large numbers. It's another thing altogether when it's small. And so I'll throw in a plug for name tags, that thing we have bantered about for as long as we've been in town. It gives everybody who is not familiar something. We know each other, but somebody new doesn't. So I'll throw that in. When we're small, we're intimate, and that makes it harder for somebody new to walk in the door.
Yeah, Kathleen.
I don't understand why, are there permanent pastors available? There are people that, there is a pastor that could come and be a permanent pastor, but you always have to have a transitional pastors before you select a permanent pastor? So that's my question.
Sure, generally that works out much better because these conversations happen, so you know who you're looking for to realistically create the best match. And we've been, years ago, we had a reputation for not necessarily finding the best matches. And our last two pastorates have been over 10 years each and very successful. And both of them had the interim period before as we prepared for that. So, and that might be one of the advantages is we don't have some issues that churches have where there's real conflict. I don't think we have a lot of conflict here. I think it's just a matter of honing in on exactly the type of person we want. So that can happen much more quickly than maybe in some churches. Does that kind of answer the question?
Emily, it is part of an intentional process to have an interim. It helps to pave the way for the seven pastors. They clean up the cobwebs. They help the congregation to discern the direction that the congregation you want to go. So when the new pastor comes, they're supported, we're supported. Everybody sort of has a fresh, clean start.
And also with that interim step of the search committee, it gives the search committee a good idea that they're representing the entire congregation in those conversations and that work has been done. So, because that's a lot of pressure on that search committee who's interviewing people and bringing on candidates forward.
And the interim can also be sounding before that search committee. I was on the last search committee called Judy Copeland, and it was the first occasion I had to be on the search committee. I found the whole process very instructive, very helpful. And I was really concerned with how we're going to find the pastor, how we're going to find the right person. And we went through and we interviewed a number of candidates and engaged. And as soon as we identified Judy and listened, for myself, it was quite evident that this was the person. We call it divine intervention, but you just knew. And as a committee, we all knew that this was the right choice.
Yes, go ahead.
Have we done any research as far as what pastors you're looking for in a church? Why are other churches being able to get these pastors? And I just would be interested to see what's drawing the pastors to certain churches.
That is interesting. I think there are a lot more churches than interims. So there are a lot of churches kind of in that process. And a lot of them, I don't think are as attractive as we are. But that's a good question. What are pastors looking for?
And as you read through the profiles that are presented, both on the interim and in also some pastors, it comes through in their profiles what they're looking for. And that's part of the discernment process. You can get a sense of this person perhaps be a good fit for Hancock, or maybe a good fit for a larger church or city. So you do get a sense here in reviewing the profile.
So we have a little bit of time left, and I want to make sure that all voices are heard that that want to say something. There's a couple people that haven't said anything, which is totally fine, but maybe you had something to say to the group and maybe it just wasn't framed for you yet. But I want to give this opportunity to Philip Browns or Bob or Patricia. I think if you have something you want to share, wisdom, knowledge that you'd like to impart to the group before we have to wrap it up for right now. Anything?
I'm going to get telling of our congregation that Bob is on the call today, or on the meeting, and Bob Kite. The fact that we must be a good congregation that's one you're going to continue to preach, but that you're here and you came to support our yard sale. Maybe you can just speak on that, of what you observed of the congregation. Maybe it'll help us on our path.
I think you're a wonderful congregation. I enjoy every time I get a chance to either see you this way, as we did back October to January last year, or even better, to be in person. And Steffi and I came to the yard sale, and it was a delight how much you like working together. So there's a lot of strength. There's a lot of reason to be hopeful. Yes, you're small, but everybody else is getting smaller too. Small doesn't necessarily mean failure at all. And in some ways, there are strengths in being a group of 25 or 30 or whatever, because you can be nimble and move quickly. So look at the things you do well. And I think there are many of them. But I've enjoyed every time I've come, and I think you'll be a very attractive congregation for a number of pastors who are looking to move. So I think you've got a lot to be hopeful for. But the key is you need to stay hopeful. It's easy to fall into a panic. And don't do that. Be curious and stay faithful, and do take good care of one another in this time of change. But I expected to just listen, but thank you for the opportunity to say something. It's kind of a problem for a preacher to find it's Sunday morning and you don't have a pulpit. So you have to be careful about asking me to speak.
As we come into the end here, any last thoughts? Yes, Matthew.
I just want to thank Neil for his work as council chair. He's kept the council going and organized. And I really appreciate all the work you put in, as well as the rest of the council. We're blessed to have the resources that we have.
I would just thank Bob for his words, reminding us, because I think when he reminds us to be helpful, it helps our burnout rate of how important it is, the work that's going on. And altogether, we can really accomplish a lot. Peter?
I'd like to go completely off script and wish Mark congratulations on his I believe it's Minneapolis marathon. That was awe-inspiring. Not that I'm gonna do that, but way to go, dude.
Thank you, Peter. I had Chris as well. I got some nice words. Thank you. Many of you were with me for 4.5 hours.
Yeah, my thought is that we continue to do what we do well, like Bob was saying. And we all have strengths. And if we do what we feel like we need to do and what we do well, then we'll get more people that want the same thing. And if we don't, we will just build on that.
Thank you, Patricia. All right, that's the time frame that you had set, Neil, the council had set. And next week we'll resume regular worship. And moving forward, and then we'll have a meeting like this again on the second Sunday of November and keep this conversation going. Hope you enjoyed the format. If you'd like to add something to the format or give comments to the council, please email any of us or catch us or in your own time and do that, please. Neil, you want to wrap up?
Sure. Can we end with the Lord's Prayer? Maybe we'll stand, and if you're at home, and I understand there's a delay, so if you hear an echo, we'll know, but let's join together in the prayer, Jesus. Taught us to pray.
Oh, right, yes.
If somebody live with joint hands, if you want. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Thank you for being here, and go in peace. And really, as Amy said, email any of us ideas as they pop in your head, and hopefully this was helpful, and thank you.
Thank you.